So now we are ready to jump into the fun stuff. We're ready to begin recording our song. But where do we start? Well, that's exactly what we're going to cover in this video. We'll cover a little bit of songwriting too, as this is typically part of the scratch tracks process. For this project, the assumption is that we have a starting point and an idea in our heads, but the song still needs to be written. In the next few videos, I'll occasionally discuss some music theory. If you're new to music theory, don't worry. Just try to follow along as best you can and use your ears to identify the sounds I'll be describing. However, the primary goal is to begin developing our ideas and get them recorded. In this video, you will learn where and how to start your project, insights into the writing process, setting up effects sends, and how to record the first tracks. So let's get started. So where do we start? Our idea could start with a chord progression, a riff, a melody, a groove, or something else. The first thing that we'll want to do is figure out what tempo and time signature this song is in. Once we do that, let's set these up in the transport bar. The song we'll be working on is 135 beats per minute, and it is in 4/4. You should also turn on the metronome at this point. The song we'll be working through started as a basic concept, and here's what I knew when I started. I was hearing something in a minor key at a moderate to slow tempo. I wanted strong directional chord harmony with a simple melodic lead that followed. In other words, the chord progression needed to be equally as strong and prominent as the lead guitar melody. I also knew that I wanted to venture outside the basic chords in the key as I was hearing this in my head, but the chords should lay a strong foundation and not be too busy. And I also knew that I wanted to include piano. Okay, so admittedly, that's somewhat vague, but often we have little more to go on than just that. Here's what I did. I chose A minor as the key and also as the first chord in the song. Next, I needed to take it somewhere. I wanted to keep the minor vibe, and I also didn't want a bunch of chords, so D minor sounded like a good chord to follow with. As I strummed, I was also hearing that each chord should be held for about 2 bars. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I also wanted to do something slightly more harmonically complex than just the basic chords in A minor. That is, I wanted to play something that was non-diatonic. I also wanted this to have a strong harmonic direction, and I tried several options. Ultimately, I landed on B flat major as the next chord. And one of the reasons this chord works is that we only have to change one note in the key of A minor to make this chord fit. That is, the B to a B flat. The D and F notes are already in the key. Let's hear these first 3 chords together. I really like how this sounds. Finally, I needed to find a way to resolve the progression back to A minor. I started by going to G major, which sounds nice in the larger progression. Let's hear that. However, given how strong the harmonic direction already is, I felt like I needed to do something else before returning to A minor. The strongest way to resolve any chord is to precede it with its own 5 chord. For example, if we have an A major, the strongest resolution would be to lead to it from an E major or an E7. But we're in the key of A minor, so we could take this one step further and add a flat 9 to that E7, creating an E7 flat 9 chord. The whole progression now sounds like this. I really like where this is going. It's a simple yet strong harmony, and you can almost begin to hear the options for the melody. So let's get this recorded. First, let's add 2 tracks. The first will be our guitar track, and the second will be a reverb bus. At this stage, we're not trying to get a perfect reverb sound, but just add some depth that helps the instrument fit in a space and also helps the musician feel more comfortable when playing. On the reverb bus, we're going to add a plugin called Epic Verb from Variety of Sound. It's a great free reverb plugin you can get in the description below, and I highly recommend you check it out. We'll then select the preset called Medium Stage 2, which is a good general reverb sound. Next, we'll route the guitar track to the reverb track by clicking on the Route button on the guitar track, then going to Sends, and selecting the reverb track. After that, we'll dial the send level back to about -15, and this should serve as a good starting point. Finally, we'll enable record monitoring on the guitar track. So why did we do all of this? We sent our guitar track to a separate track, which we called a bus. And this has several advantages when compared to adding reverb to individual tracks. First, effects like reverb and delay are often set up on dedicated tracks because these effects will be used across multiple tracks with identical settings. By setting up reverb on a dedicated track, you only need to add one instance of the reverb, which minimizes system resources. Second, effects like reverb and delay are typically mixed independent of one another. However, if you add these directly on a track, your delayed sound would feed into the reverb, therefore adding reverb to your delayed effect. And this can make it challenging to dial in the right amount of delay. Third, sometimes you'll use multiple reverbs on a single track. Like the previous point, you don't want to add reverb to reverb. Also, unlike adding effects on individual tracks, the effects that you add to buses should be set with the mix set to 100%. Let's arm the track and check our levels. We'll need to select our inputs, and for this, I'm using my Motu interface, and my guitar is on input 3. If you're miking an amp, place the microphone halfway between the center and edge of the cone and about an inch or so off the grill cloth. We'll discuss miking in more detail when we get to the production tracks, but this should be good enough to get you started. Remember, we're also going to target around -18 to -14 for average levels on the meter. We'll also want to allow a few bars of space at the beginning for the count in, and here's a little trick that I like to use. First, make sure that Snap is enabled and click on Measure 3. Next, go to Project Settings under the File menu. Go to Project Start Time and click Set 0 to edit cursor. Also, set Project Start Measure to -1. This will reset the measure count in so that the timeline has 2 measures before the first measure. Click OK. Let's double check to make sure that the metronome is enabled. Now press W to move the cursor back to the beginning and click Ctrl R to begin recording. Maybe not the perfect take, but it gets the basic idea down, and that's our goal. Let's review what we've learned. We began the project by building out a basic concept that began with one chord and a general idea of where it should go. We then added 2 tracks, one for guitar and another for reverb, and we routed the guitar track to the reverb track. And we got a basic rough recording of our verse.